The old high school building stood as a relic of the past, its weathered bricks echoing with the memories of 1,000 students who had walked its halls. The graduating class of '94 had scattered across the world, leaving behind the innocence of youth for the harsh realities of adulthood. But as the years passed, a shadow fell over their memories, one that they could never quite shake. 25 years had passed since the class of '94 had bid farewell to their alma mater. For many, high school was a distant memory, buried beneath the responsibilities of careers, families, and mortgages. But when the invitation arrived in their mailboxes, it stirred something deep within them, a curiosity tinged with nostalgia and apprehension. The reunion was to be held in the old gymnasium, a place that had once been the epicenter of their teenage lives. As they gathered outside the imposing building, whispers of excitement mingled with nervous laughter. Some had aged gracefully, while others bore the marks of time more harshly. Among them was Sarah, who had been voted prom queen all those years ago. Her once bright eyes were now haunted by the passage of time, and she clutched the invitation in her trembling hands as if it were a lifeline. As the evening wore on, old friendships were rekindled and memories shared over glasses of cheap champagne. But beneath the surface, there lingered a sense of unease, as if something dark and sinister lurked in the shadows. It started with whispers, barely audible over the din of conversation. Stories of strange occurrences in the abandoned corridors of the old school, of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena. At first, they dismissed them as the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by nostalgia and too much alcohol. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, fueled by the fear that had taken root in their hearts. Sarah found herself drawn to the darkened hallways, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors as she searched for something she couldn't name. It was well past midnight when Sarah found herself standing before the door to the old biology lab, a place that had always held a special fascination for her. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door and stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of decay and dampness. The room was bathed in darkness, illuminated only by the pale glow of the moon filtering through the dusty windows. As Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw something move in the shadows, a flicker of movement that sent shivers down her spine. With a sense of mounting dread, she realized that she was not alone in the room. Something was watching her from the darkness, its presence palpable in the stillness of the night. As Sarah stood frozen in terror, the figure stepped forward into the light, revealing itself to be a ghostly apparition of a young girl. Her eyes were empty sockets, her skin pale and translucent, and she seemed to hover inches above the ground as if defying gravity itself. With a voice that seemed to echo from beyond the grave, the ghost spoke, recounting the tragic tale of her untimely death within these very walls. She had been a student at the school, a shy and introverted girl who had been mercilessly bullied by her classmates. Unable to bear the torment any longer, she had taken her own life in the very room where Sarah now stood. And ever since that fateful day, her restless spirit had wandered the halls of the old school, trapped between this world and the next. As the ghostly apparition spoke, Sarah felt a surge of empathy and sorrow wash over her. She had been blind to the pain and suffering of others during her time in high school, too consumed by her own quest for popularity and acceptance. But now, faced with the tragic consequences of her actions, she knew that she had to make amends. With tears streaming down her face, she reached out to the ghostly figure, offering her hand in friendship and forgiveness. And in that moment, something miraculous happened. The darkness that had enveloped the room began to recede, replaced by a warm and comforting light. The ghostly apparition smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude before fading away into the ether. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Sarah emerged from the old school, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The specter of the past had been laid to rest, its hold over her finally broken. And as she looked out at the world with fresh eyes, she knew that she would never forget the lessons she had learned that night. For sometimes, the true horrors are not the ones that lurk in the darkness, but the ones that reside within our own hearts. The envelope was plain, unassuming, but the words printed on it sent shivers down Lily's spine. 20th year high school reunion. She hadn't thought about her high school years in ages. Memories, both good and bad, flooded back to her as she held the invitation in her trembling hands. Despite her initial reluctance, curiosity got the better of her. Lily decided to attend the reunion, if only to see how much everyone had changed, and perhaps to confront some lingering demons from her past. The old school looked both familiar and eerie as Lily pulled into the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the deserted grounds. A sense of foreboding settled over her as she stepped out of her car and made her way to the entrance. Inside, the gymnasium had been transformed for the occasion. Balloons and streamers adorned the walls, and a DJ played upbeat music in the corner. The room was filled with laughter and chatter as former classmates greeted each other with hugs and handshakes. Lily felt out of place among the crowd. She spotted a few faces she recognized but mostly felt like a stranger in a sea of old acquaintances. As the night wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the evening progressed, Lily found herself drawn into conversations with former classmates. Each interaction felt more surreal than the last. People she hadn't thought about in years recounted memories as if they had happened yesterday. But it was the whispers that sent chills down her spine. In hushed tones, people spoke of the incident that had occurred during their senior year. Lily had long buried the memories of that fateful night, but now they came flooding back with a vengeance. It was supposed to be a harmless prank, a midnight séance in the abandoned wing of the school. Lily and her friends had sneaked in after hours, armed with candles and an Ouija board. They laughed and joked as they attempted to contact the spirits that were said to haunt the halls. But then something went terribly wrong. The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The planche had moved of its own accord, spelling out cryptic messages. And then, without warning, all hell broke loose. Lily remembered screams echoing through the darkness, the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. She and her friends fled in terror, vowing never to speak of that night again. But now, standing in the midst of her former classmates, she couldn't escape the feeling that the past was catching up with her. As the night wore on, Lily found herself drawn to the abandoned wing of the school. Despite her better judgment, she couldn't resist the pull of the past. The hallways were dark and deserted, the air heavy with the scent of decay. Memories flooded back to her as she wandered the empty corridors. She could almost hear the echoes of her footsteps mingling with the whispers of the past. And then she saw it, a figure lurking in the shadows, its eyes glowing with malevolence.